Now we're going to show you how to analyze data when you have two variables recorded. So here's a two-way table that I created when I surveyed my other statistics classes, and I asked them what their favorite lunch types were. And you can see there are different periods and the different lunch types. So what are the two categorical variables? Yes, it's the lunch type and the class period. So what percent of students prefer burgers for lunch? Well, it would help to answer this question if I knew the totals, so I'm going to add those up. And then I'm going to also do the bottom totals for each period. And so the percent of students that prefer lunch are 22 out of 61, which would be 0.36 or 36%. What percent of students are in my first period? Well, that would be the 13 students out of the 61 total, 21.2131 or 21.3% roughly. Now, what percent of students are in my third period and prefer burgers? So that means they have to be third period and prefer burgers. That would be those 7 students right there. And since it's a percent of all my students, it would be out of the 61. So that's 11.5%. Now, when you specify two categorical variables like I did here, we call this a joint relative frequency. To calculate it, you divide the counts that fall into the one cell for both categories. So this one cell falls into both third period and burgers. And then you divide by the total for the entire table. So if I did 6th period and tacos, that would be that number right there, 4 divided by 61, or 6.6%. Now, what percent of 6th period students prefer tacos? Now, since I'm talking about 6th period, that means I'm only interested in this area highlighted in blue. The group that likes tacos is 4 out of that 24, or 16.7%. Now, a conditional relative frequency gives the percent of individuals that fall into a specific category among everyone who falls into a specified category for the other variable. So we have the percentage of people who like tacos out of all 6th period students. To calculate it, divide the counts that are in both categories, in this case the 4, by the total for the given category. So we knew it was 6th period, so we divide by 24. Now we're going to change it up a little bit and say, given that a student prefers tacos, what percent of them are in 6th period? So the given means I'm in this world right here, the yellow, not the blue so much. So it's still the 4, but this time it's out of 12, or 33.3%. The most common method to graph is a side-by-side bar graph. It is like making separate bar graphs for each value of one category. And first you need to convert to relative frequencies. It's very important to change it to percents so that the total in each category on the axis adds up to 100%. All right, so we're going to go ahead and work on changing some of this data into percents. And since I'm going to do it by first period, third period, and 6th period, I need the percent that prefer burgers and tacos, and really all the categories, but I have some of them already filled in for you. And I'm going to make sure I get that value for every period. So the percent who prefer burgers in first period, if I look at the table, that's 4 out of 13. The 4 who prefer burgers in first out of the 13 in first period. The percent who prefer tacos in first period is also 4 by chance out of 13, so it's 30.8%. The percent who prefer burgers in 6th period, see I have 24 because there are 24 students in 6, are 11. So 45.8%. And we already did tacos for 6, so we'll jump to third period. And we had 7. That third period was also 24 students, which is 29.2%. The percent who prefer tacos in third is 4 out of 24, which is 16.7%. So if we fill in the values, I get the 31. I've rounded to the nearest whole number. And that should add up to roughly, yes, 100%. There's a little rounding error because this is like adding up to 101. But that's okay. When you add them up, they might be slightly off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a bar graph for first period, a bar graph for third period, and a bar graph for 6th period using this data. So here we go. First, my highest percentage was 46%, so I need to go up to 50. I have 10 units here. So I'm going to go every 5. It looks like every 10 because I'm not marking every single unit. Then I'm going to have my first period, and here's the graph showing burgers, tacos, nachos, bagel, and pizza. And there's third period and sixth period. And here's a legend. Always be sure to add a legend if you can. Or you could, and I've had students individually label these burgers, tacos, nachos, bagel, pizza. That's fine. Now, another type of graph and don't forget your title. Technically, I should have relative frequency on the side here, so I should add that. Now, a segmented bar graph is just like a side-by-side bar graph, except each of the categories are stacked, adding up to 100%. So if we do the same thing, except now I'm going to 100%, and so I label my vertical axes, I should really say relative frequency here. And then I have first period, there's the bars, third period, and sixth period. So, and add my legend, but I could write burgers, tacos, nachos, bagel, and pizza on each of these pieces that I need to label.